Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Uncanny Treks. Tonight we are covering Season 2, Episode 6 of X-Men 97, Danger.exe. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Matt, how you doing this evening?
Doing great, Bob. When you heard the title of the episode, did you automatically know who it was referring to?
I did, although I then had some doubt because I was like, would they really want to do Danger? Danger's an interesting character, but she's a very particular taste of a character, if that makes sense. So I was having some doubts as the episode started, and then to just go ahead and skip ahead a little bit, we saw the HAL 2001 eye with the Danger Room eye that Xavier was talking to, and once he was talking to that, I was, oh yeah, Matt was right. They're definitely going to do Danger. And lo and behold, they did do Danger.
They did. I don't know about the placement of this episode. People after last week's were kind of bummed because it took away from the whole apocalypse storyline and took a detour with Wolverine. This one brought it back to the mansion with the main players, but then the whole danger piece is a side story in and of itself. But then people will praise this episode, and I'm really, it's not that much back on the same path. Yeah, you got the whole everything we're talking about with Magneto and Professor X, but still, it bothered me a little bit from a fan's perspective, the way some of the fan community reacted to it.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing this. I'm not over the moon about this episode or episode 5, but I don't think either is bad. And I have a hard time parsing someone having a strong preference for one or the other.
That's how I am. I enjoyed last week's episode as much as this one. I don't really see that much of a difference. I don't get that from what fans are saying with this, but it's apparently a
Yeah.
thing because the last episode did score a much lower rating on most of the meta sites.
On the one hand, fan irrationality always makes me a little irritated. But on the other hand, speaking selfishly, as somebody who doesn't love Wolverine and doesn't love Weapon Plus nonsense, that episode scoring low does kind of make me happy.
See, I'm the opposite. I don't mind the weapon stuff as much. I feel like they've given Wolverine enough time to maybe reset himself a little bit because he was so overexposed in the 90s. But then I expect Wolverine in the 90s. It's a double-edged sword.
My impression is that the showrunner for season 1, Bo DeMeo, was not a huge Wolverine guy and was consciously trying to keep him where he doesn't overshadow the other characters. It seems that philosophy is carried over to whoever is the showrunner for season 2, and I appreciate that. So if the negative fan reaction to last week's episode, even though I think last week's episode is fine, but if the negative fan reaction to it somewhat keeps that policy going, I'm okay with that.
Well, with Danger being introduced, pretty much the same way as the comics to some degree.
Not really, though. I
G-
haven't
g-
read the arc in a long time, but they might surprise me. But it's harder to see this version of Danger joining the X-Men. Also, they're going a lot for Onslaught here. They may actually be teasing a form of Onslaught, but they're doing a little bit of Onslaught with Danger herself. And there's also this whole thing of Xavier taking out all of his angst about Magneto's death onto Danger, right? In a weird way, I'm not sure if the writers were going for this or when this was written, but it does come up to the wise practice that some boomers and others have adapted of the just tell an AI all about their deepest, darkest things, right? I did enjoy this episode as an allegory for Professor X has taken out the death of his boyfriend on a chatbot, and that has bad consequences. That's a pretty funny plot for an episode, I think.
Yeah. I just want to make clear for our listeners too. I know Bob says boomer trauma dumping. I don't think it's just boomers, Bob. I think that's just about every generation doing that. It's just certain people. I don't think it's boomer specific.
I do think boomers are more apt to do it than other generations. I admit that people of all generations do it, but I do think it's more of a boomer thing. Maybe I'm
Okay.
wrong. I don't have hard numbers on that, but I am saying that, envisioning that
Yeah.
there is a uptick.
I think more your teenagers this generation are probably more likely to be trauma dumping on AI than your boomers.
Definitely some of them are. Definitely some of them are.
Watching Xavier do it with Magneto is homoerotic, Bob.
This is really going for the old Xavier Magneto ship, isn't it? And it's done pretty well.
I don't have a problem with what they're doing here. They're definitely pushing it. Last week we pushed the Morph Wolverine relationship. Here we're pushing the Magneto Professor X to the next level.
I'm glad that even in the era of the Disney tyranny that ended the acknowledging the menage a trois between Jean, Scott, and Wolverine in the comics, I'm glad that they can at least keep the subtext going between Morph and Wolverine and between Xavier and Magneto. Matt, so to go to our other spotlight character of this episode, it's Polaris. This is a pretty fun portrayal of Polaris. I don't know if how they show her flying makes any sense at all, but it is visually cool, so I'm not going to complain about it too much.
She just learned it a little differently, and Magneto never taught her, Bob.
It's
If
kind of
only there was some
stopped
kind
it.
of school she could go to learn how to do this correctly.
Indeed. But yeah, that would be funny to have a flashback of Xavier criticizing Polaris's form.
Magneto's like, do this, make a bubble. She's like, oh, okay, like this? Yeah, okay. And then she makes a cube.
Yeah, that's how she's different. Dad makes a spear, I make a cube. It is funny to see Polaris realize after presumably working for the government for months and months that, oh yeah, the government doesn't exist to stop terrorists and bigots, Polaris. It exists to encourage them to do false flags.
Getting to see X Factor again was great. I was glad that they showed up once more because they were absent a little bit. If you're going to have these teams, you figure X Force, X Factor, you thought they were going to play a bigger part.
Yeah, I can't tell if they are going to play a bigger role or if we should just expect them to show up in these guest appearances here and there.
And is this going to make it through this season, or are we going to see a complete change by season 3? I don't know.
Matt, have you seen X Factor's Red Blackbird before?
I believe it was in the comic we covered,
Oh,
but
it
I may be
was?
wrong. I do know that
Okay.
X Force had a similar type jet or something that was a little different.
If I'm remembering right, the X Factor jet more looked like a more military cargo plane, as it wasn't as sleek as the Blackbirds.
So it was more like a mercenary type looking thing.
I believe in the comics, X Factor has a red Blackbird too, but honestly, I don't remember that. That's just something I saw online. Even though I've read a good deal of X Factor comics, a red Blackbird doesn't bring anything to mind. And I didn't remember it from issue number 2 of X-Men 97 season 2, so I was surprised when I saw it in live action.
Yeah, it's just a recoloring of it. It seems like something that America would do. Just spray paint a blackbird, probably costing a couple $1 million.
Definitely, there's no current drama with planes going on at all that we might draw some comparison with.
No, not at
No
all.
drama at all. The other thing is, man, they just really are making Havoc the worst, which, as I've said in earlier episodes this season, I get it. It makes sense, especially given with how Rick Remender wrote Havoc and Uncanny Avengers. But man, Havoc is not coming off good this season.
Nah, Havoc is not my favorite character. Are they just trying to make him as different from Cyclops as possible when it comes to leadership attitudes? Just so when they do finally reveal that they're brothers, it becomes more
of a shock. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll actually bother to do this. If this show goes for the 20 seasons they're talking about, definitely it gives them time to do a redemption arc for Havoc. And not to ceaselessly repeat myself, but this was something I was saying in an earlier episode this season, is it does make sense to make X Factor a more dystopian team. In my memory of the X Factor comics, which are not strong, they're 10 years old, but in my memory of the X Factor comics, they are not quite so dystopian, but there are elements in the comics of the X Factor guys are we leading to Days of Future Past? It's like that, right? So it does make sense for dramatic purposes and for purposes of the story world to make X Factor this more dystopian team. So I get why they're doing it. It makes me a little sad because I like a lot of those characters on the team. Speaking of characters, Matt, do you want to run down the full list of Xavier student cameos we get in this episode?
Yes, Bob, but be warned, there's always danger around the corner as a sentinel falls from the sky.
I do want to just say then before you read that, Xavier is just got to be the worst teacher ever, right? Every class with Xavier, he's just randomly talking about his relationship with Magneto, how much he misses Magneto. Oh, God. I don't know what it would be before his boyfriend died, but before his boyfriend died, it would be something else. Probably the dream. Xavier would just turn every class on literature or philosophy into, let's talk about my dream. We could talk about literally anything else, Charles.
How does this relate to my dream? Then on top of that, Bob, of course, he's got to make the kids feel scared. That's the other part, too. They have to be afraid. Already live a horrible life as mutants. All right, Bob, so let's talk our student cameos here. We've got iBoy, Chamber, Monet St. Croix, Sync, Kid Omega, No Girl, Shark Girl, Cypher, Dupe, Beak, Dust, Pixie, Tattoo, Glob, Wing, Skin, Rockslide, Radiant, Boom, Angel Salvador, Artie Maddox, Nature Girl, and Mondo. Combination of Generation X folk and people from the Morrison run.
Yeah, that's mostly it. A few people from stuff that was in the era of the Morrison run or slightly after the Morrison run, but not in the Morrison run itself, like Wing and Rockslide. And then I think Nature Girl maybe doesn't show up, and definitely Shark Girl I don't think show up till the Jason Aaron run. But yeah, largely you're exactly right. It's the Morrison School and Generation X. Basically, these were pretty much all in the government concentration camp in episode 2. The only new characters are Shark Girl, and Dupe is the little green dude who looks like the ghost from Ghostbusters, Slimer. He's from the same era as Morrison, but he's from the Peter Milligan run on X-Statix originally, which is something we will look at some point. I'm not sure if we'll look at it right after the Morrison X-Men run, which we're currently releasing our coverage of, or that's also something we could just wait years, because even though it stylistically feels interesting as a counterpoint to the Morrison X-Men run, the X-Statix, X-Force run that Peter Milligan did, it stands outside X-Men continuity in a weird way.
Yeah, looking through these names, I know most of these characters. I was surprised the most to see Nature Girl because I do remember her from the Aaron run.
They've done some fun stuff with her recently. I've only read one, but there's probably been more storylines in the online X-Men book from the Krakoa era. The story arc was called X-Men Green, where she basically becomes an eco-terrorist, which I get it, girl. I get it.
I'm also surprised, like you said, with the Slimer character Dupe, because I never liked his character. I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan, but having Dupe, the slime thing,
If it
not my
makes you feel
favorite.
any better, he doesn't actually have a slime gimmick.
Oh, I know. His look is,
The
I'm not
other
good with it.
thing, I'll be curious. I could see the Milligan X-Tax run winning you over to Dupe, but I could also see it failing to do so. The funny thing about Dupe is that, in a way, I don't think of Dupe as a student. Dupe is weirder and a little bit more advanced than that, especially in that Milligan X-Statix run. Now, in the Jason Aaron run, Dupe is around the school. I think he works for the school, but more as staff. Student, either. He's like older and more experienced, and also a little bit too inscrutable to be a student, if that makes sense.
Another character I want to point out here, too, in these cameos, Bob, that we have seen several times, who plays a huge part in the Morrison run, is Kid Omega. Really wanted to see a Riot at Xavier's episode.
Kid Omega is one of the few characters here who actually gets to say something, right? This is jumping ahead a little bit, but he gets to make fun of the X-Men and be like, how many X-Men does it take to find an exit from their torture chamber? And does he say Magneto was right, or does he have the t-shirt?
He's got the t-shirt, maybe. I don't know. If they could do a single episode with that, if they wanted to, and play up him. They've made it a point to show him several times. I'm hoping that's what they're leading toward, because I could dig that.
They're definitely going that way. Although, counterpoint, and this is also jumping way ahead, with what we see at the end of this episode and the fact that we only have 3 episodes left in the season, I don't think they're going to do it this season.
Oh, it won't happen this season, though.
So that's probably a season 3 thing. But yeah, I would be really surprised if they don't do a version of Riot at Xavier's, given how much they've had Quentin talking. The other thing I wanted to note, and this is in one way, it's a way of me acknowledging that I messed up, and another way, it's me of doing a victory lap, is the character Mondo, who's one of the most obscure Generation X members. He's hardly on the team, although he's fun. We definitely do see Mondo this episode, and we definitely saw Mondo episode 2. I thought I saw Mondo in episode 2, but I was not for sure about that. Also, the one character who I'd never heard of was this character Cypher, not Doug Ramsey Cypher, a different Cypher.
Wow, a different Cypher.
I said Shark Girl and Dupe were the only new ones, but now that I look at this list, I don't remember seeing Rock Slide in episode 2. So
Rock Slide was
probably new as well.
Quick question too about Mondo. Mondo was the gray person, right?
Mondo's a big Samoan guy, but he's short and he's got brown skin. The gray guy is Skin.
Mondo is pretty obscure because I have no clue who you're talking about.
Skin is in the Generation X book a lot more than Mondo. And Skin, tall and Chicano. He's from Los Angeles. Whereas Mondo is short and fat and Samoan. Mondo is in some of the early Gen X books. Then it turns out that it's a guy who is impersonating Mondo. I think it's Black Tom is using a plant construct to impersonate Mondo, if I remember right. The real Mondo was never actually on the team, and they meet the real Mondo a little, but I don't think he joins the team at all in the original series, although I do think he joins Generation X in Krakoa. Just to run down who the Generation X ones are: Chamber, Monet, Sing, Mondo, and Skin are the ones who would be Generation X, although there is a later Generation X series from pre-Krakoa where they put, I want to say, Nature Girl and a couple of these other characters on there. So they could do a version of Generation X where they combine the 90s characters with some of the Generation X characters that they used in this short series pre-Krakoa in 2017, 20.
I don't see that happening. I don't think they're going to go Generation X because I feel they're using a lot of those characters as their fill-in students to make the class look bigger. That's what Generation X is. I get it.
I'm not saying that they're going to have an episode focused on them, but you are definitely going to see before the end of season 3, I would put money down that you're going to see some version of Generation X, maybe just as a background thing, but you're going to see them in the classic uniforms doing something at least for the scene. I would put money down that will happen before the end of season 3.
I don't think they have an X-Men 97 betting line.
I don't think you would put the Generation X characters in if you weren't intending to do that. Given what we've seen them do with X Factor and X Force, that makes total sense for them to do. And like you're saying, there is the TV movie, right? Even though the TV movie wasn't wildly successful or anything,
It exists,
obviously.
Yeah.
It existed. It's an easy thing to do for nostalgia. It's an easy thing to get people engaging with the thing online. They're definitely going to do it before the end of season 3, I say.
Now, we'll never see an Excalibur, though, Bob.
I would not say never, Matt.
We're way less likely to see an Excalibur. But we're seeing all the other teams, too. That's what kills me. We're seeing X Factor, X Force, Generation X, no Excalibur.
You might be more likely to get an Excalibur episode like you got with X-Force in episode 2 than you are with Generation X. But the difference, though, is you have to wait longer. Although the challenge there is you really need Kitty Pryde for Excalibur.
Exactly. We have had no
That's
Kitty
hard.
Pryde since
Yeah.
Pride of the X-Men.
Yeah. Man, when you put it like that, it does make me dislike Jubilee because she's so displaced Kitty Pryde.
We get plenty of Kitty Pryde in the series from the 2000s. What was it? Evolution had Kitty Pryde in it, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Is she in Evolution? I don't remember.
She's in one of them, I know, because her and Rogue are friends.
That's probably Evolution. There's X-Men Evolution and there's Wolverine in the X-Men. She might be in both.
She was a pretty substantial character, but you're right, they substituted her with Jubilee in the 90s.
In the 90s, Jubilee is self-consciously doing the Kitty Pryde role. Then Jubilee, no offense to the character, feels very 90s in some ways. So in the 2000s, they very much wanted to give X-Men Evolution and Wolverine and the X-Men a different feel from X-Men 92. And part of that would be, going to Kitty Pryde, who was pretty prominent in the comics then because of in Claremont coming back, things like that. We get to see Mr. Fantastic as impersonated by Morph. Did that make you nostalgic for that awful 90s Fantastic Four cartoon?
It did, Bob. I think the goal here is for Morph. They are going to shapeshift into all the Fantastic Four by the end of the season. Next week, we're getting Human Torch.
Are we going to see Morph present themselves as the awful 90s Iron Man, though? That's the real question.
We actually got to see the awful 90s Iron Man in the first season of X-Men 97 when the world's coming to an end.
I guess we need to see Morph present as the Silver Surfer then. I guess that's the next thing.
We have not seen the Silver Surfer. Maybe Galactus. Thanos.
Well, Matt, what was your favorite Bishop line in this episode, which weirdly turned out to be a big Bishop spotlight episode? Who turned on the video game? The streets were my danger room, or always a damn machine? What was the better Bishop line?
I really loved the streets were my danger room.
Yeah, I'm feeling that one too.
It's so funny because it fits so many different levels, because the danger room with the holograms and stuff is one thing. Then the danger room with the physical mechanical pieces is a different thing. Then Bishop's danger room is the streets.
A question for you, Matt. So in the fight, they go to Genosha and they have a fight with Danger. In an interesting way, it recalls the 9/11 issue of Grant Morrison's new X-Men. It even has Polaris there. It has the Magneto statue, all that stuff. Obviously not in that Morrison issue, but you have the big fight that's not dissimilar to the Morrison issue. Then you have Cyclops and Jean execute a combo move. Could you explain that combo move to me?
Okay, as my understanding is that Jean makes telekinetic claws or something. They're doing this combo move that we've seen before where Wolverine uses his claws to refract Cyclops' optic blast and make them multiples. Does that make sense? There's multiple beams. So she basically made her own version of the claws. He shoots into them. Then I guess the 3 prongs break the concussion blast up, so she shot 3 different times.
Okay, that makes sense. I think the problem was when I saw it, I was more thinking about the Gambit Wolverine combo move we saw. I believe that was way back beginning of season one. That was where Gambit charges up Wolverine's claws.
Yeah.
I forgot about that they do a Cyclops Wolverine combo. That's
W-
why it was confusing.
It is weird, though, for her to decide to go the Wolverine route. Was that not interesting to you?
Yeah, no, it does seem to kind of signal the menage a trois, doesn't it?
They don't know all our moves yet, is exactly what she says.
Heyo. I'd forgotten she said that line. That's a suggested line, dude. That's funny. I didn't have that much else to say about this episode. I did think it was very funny that, like the Morrison run, we wind up with them forming X Corps, and we're seeing X Corps meet, but unlike the Morrison run, they're treating X Corps a little bit more, at least in this episode, as a corporation, right? And we're seeing a boardroom meeting. And that was interesting. It was X-Men going corporate. It was also interesting because it recalls the Quiet Council from the Krakoa era of X-Men comics, which we also saw a version of with the Genosha episode in season one. And so it's just funny that the episode went that way. It was an absolute trip to see Rogue and Nightcrawler in Frank Quitely style new X-Men outfits. Rogue and Nightcrawler are around in the new X-Men era, obviously, but I don't ever remember seeing them in Frank Quitely style new X-Men outfits. Maybe they were, and I just don't remember it. It was wild to see that on screen.
What I really like about Nightcrawlers, though, is they have the collar. Another little change, too, that they made in this episode, which is funny. We're recording this the same week as San Diego Comic-Con. And at San Diego Comic-Con, they revealed a new Professor X action figure that has his chair. And they waited until this episode dropped because they didn't want to reveal that the chair would shoot stuff from the front like it does in the show.
Oh, funny. We really got to a very full-on action figure-y Xavier chair.
But yeah, it was neat to see these outfits. I love Beasts. That's my favorite of them because it has that furled collar thing or whatever it's called. You know what I'm talking about? A Shakespearean type collar. I don't know what it's called, but that's my favorite outfit of this bunch because it makes him look so much more sophisticated. It's like Beast with his lab coat, Beast with this. It makes him look way less beastly.
Here's a question. Do you think since they're going with a more Morrison and Quietly look this season, do you think we'll see Beast get to a more feline version this season or next season?
I don't think so. I don't think they're going to go. I take that back. They introduced secondary mutations in the last season with Emma.
That's right.
So there may be an entire episode dedicated to that, which would be cool.
Morrison in their run handled secondary mutations subtly, so subtly that it was arguably a little confusing. That's not really how X-Men 97 rolls. I would expect the show, if it does do that, to be much more head-on about it.
It would make up for that horrible episode in the original X-Men 92 run with Beast and being sad.
Is that the one with the sick girl?
I believe so. It was really bad. I remember when we were going through our coverage of it, that was probably our worst episode, I believe, for that season. The name escapes me.
I don't want to know the name. Speaking of great things, though, Matt, who was your character of the episode?
I got to give it to Polaris, Bob. It's always good to see a character like Polaris. She had such a big, well, not a big part, but she did play a pretty interesting role in the early X-Men comics. So to have her brought in and to have a bigger part here. Now I just need Iceman.
It's interesting that they go a little bit revisionist here, and it's Polaris was a member with the other original five, but not Havoc. Maybe that was already done in the X Factor episode of 92. I can't remember, but it's interesting that's the way they're going, and it serves to make Havoc even more unsympathetic. But you're definitely right. Great episode for Polaris. It's been a long time since I've read a Polaris comic. I don't know that she's all that punk rock or all that literary or Xavier's teacher's pet in the comics, but all those are interesting things to attach to Polaris. I certainly enjoyed her.
One more thing I want to say about her, though, is they did incorporate her skull ring on her finger. Remember she had those skull things in her hair, but now she had it here on her finger, which was really cool. Did you catch that?
I did not catch that, although it's also interesting. They're probably not going to do this, but do you remember the evil mutant Malice from the 80s who people? Polaris had her time as Magneto's daughter in the 60s and had the skull motif in the costume long before the 80s, but they did do an arc in the 80s where Malice was a member of the Marauders with Sabretooth and Arclight and Harpoon and one of Mr. Sinister's early teams. They do the Mutant Massacre, and Malice basically possesses people, and so she possesses Polaris for a good chunk of the late 80s, and I think she does that through a ruby choker, but it is interesting. I don't think the show's necessarily going to go in this direction, but you could see the show going this direction in the future of Malice possessing Polaris through the skull ring or something.
Oh, yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, I like that. Because
Yeah.
it was very intentional because they show her using her power at the very end with the ring on. It almost looked like a Green Lantern type thing.
Interesting. Although I could also see them being not wanting to go there because you've already done that with Phoenix and you've done
Yeah, I don't see him going there, but it is a good potential. There's potential there.
But there is just that danger that too many X-Men stories are about, okay, a woman gets too much power. We got to take from her. That's not a great thing. But yeah, I agree with you. Polaris is great this episode. I felt like you were going to go with Polaris, so I was going to go with Bishop. I was surprised how much Bishop spotlight we got this episode, and I quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, Bishop's great. Bob, next week's episode, I did not look up the title.
I did not either.
So do we want to leave it a surprise?
Let's leave it as a surprise. All right, you've been listening to Uncanny Treks. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Join us next week for Season 2, Episode 7, whatever it's called. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks for listening.